للفرج. اللهم صل على Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, the third one for those who truly love Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra salamullah alayha. اللهم صل على Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In Farsi, we have a Farsi saying. We say, in jamiyat in salawat, as in this population and this quiet salawat. Say salawat that inshallah in Medina, the Prophet can hear your salawat. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. They say it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. And now you've proven the quantity is not important. The quality is definitely delivered. Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First and foremost, my sincere condolences on our present Imam, Sahib Asr al-Zaman, on the auspicious shahadat of none other than our mother, Imam Mehdi's mother, Ahlul Bayt's mother, Sayyidah Fatima Zahra salamullah alayh. There's a very famous hadith that says, someone went to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and said, Yabna Rasulullah, when we have a calamity, we have a problem, we call for the Ahlul Bayt. We ask the Ahlul Bayt, this Imam, that Imam, to help us. When the Imams of Ahlul Bayt have a calamity, who do they call on? And he responded, we call on our mother Fatima al-Zahra, salamullah alayh. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This shows the status of Fatima Zahra salamullah alayh. Why I mentioned that hadith, as unfortunately many of us have experienced the passing of our great-grandmother, our grandmother, our mother, and nothing hurts more than the passing of a mother. Inshallah, those whose mothers are alive, like mine, they have an extended life, a pious life, a healthy life. But those who have experienced the passing of their mother, they can understand maybe a small, tiny part of what the Ahlul Bayt have experienced when the mother passed away. But not the manner that Fatima al-Zahra was taken from the Ahlul Bayt, between the door and the wall, and crushed ribs. What I ask everyone who's here tonight, we have another majlis tomorrow night and a second Fatimiyyah in a few weeks' time. And between now and the second Fatimiyyah, every Friday, it is dedicated to Fatima Zahra salamullah alayh. And the more we hold programs between now and then, we are pleasing the heart of Fatima Zahra. Those who have their mothers passed away or their loved ones, they would encourage their friends, and their friends would encourage others. Hey, listen, Falani has a majlis for the mother at the center. Habibi, come and attend. He'll be very happy, you know. He's got no one here. He's alone in Australia. As migrants, we can really relate to that. That, oh, you know, Habibi, you know, you heard the guy's mother passed away? Let's go to the center. They've got a majlis for his mother. You make him happy. There's no one more madhloom than Imam Mehdi alayhi salam. That his mother has passed away, and the Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the way we should be holding the majalis, we're not. It's unfortunate. So inshallah, I ask you all, after tonight, encourage your friends, families, say, hey, come, there's majlis that's been held for the mother of Imam Mehdi. When Imam Mehdi comes, he wants to see us. But it is during his absence that we get trained for when he returns. So inshallah, without any further ado, I ask my brother Hassan Dusi to start with the Quran. Not Hassan Dusi, sorry, brother Ali Murray to start with the Quran, followed by Ziyarat Fatima Zahra by my brother Hassan Dusi. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
صلى على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين. ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون. فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون. قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون. فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون. إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون. هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون. لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون. سلام قولا من رب رحيم. وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون. ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلى على محمد وآل محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أزور سيدتي فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها إصالة عن نفسي ونيابة عن الشهداء والمحبين أهل البيت عليهم السلام ووالدي وأصحاب الحقوق علينا غربة إلى الله تعالى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا ممتحنة امتحنك الله الذي خلقك قبل أن يخلقك فوجدك لما امتحنك صابرا وزعمنا أدنى لك أولياء ومصدقون وصابرون لكل ما أتانا به أبوك صلى الله عليه وآله وأتى به وسيّه فإنا نسألك إن كنا صدقناك إلا ألهقتنا بتصديقنا لهما لنبشر أنفسنا بأننا قد سهرنا بولايتك. السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله، السلام عليك يا بنت نبي الله، السلام عليك يا بنت حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا بنت خليل الله، السلام عليك يا بنت صفي الله، السلام عليك يا بنت أمين الله، السلام عليك يا بنت خير خلق الله، السلام عليك يا بنت أفضل أنبياء الله ورسله وملائكته. السلام عليك يا بنت خير البرية، السلام عليك يا سيدة نساء العالمين من الأولين والآخرين. السلام عليك يا زوجة ولي الله وخير الخلق بعد رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أم الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام عليك أيتها الصديقة الشهيدة، السلام عليك أيتها الرزية المرضية، السلام عليك أيتها الفاضلة الزكية، السلام عليك أيتها الحوراء الإنسية، السلام عليك أيتها التقية النقية، السلام عليك أيتها المحدثة العليمة، السلام عليك أيتها المظلومة المقصوبة، السلام عليك أيتها المستهدة المقهورة، السلام عليك يا فاطمة بنت رسول الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلى الله عليك وعلى روحك وبدنك. أشهد أنك مضيت على بينة من ربك وأن من سرك فقد سر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله، ومن جفاك فقد جفا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله، ومن آذاك فقد آذى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله، ومن وصلك فقد وصل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله ومن قطعك فقد قطع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله لأنك بزعة منه وروحه الذي بين جنبيه أشهد الله ورسله وملائكته أني راض عمن رزيت ساخط على من سخطت عليه متبرئ ممن تبرأت منه مبال لمن واليت ماد لمن عاديت مبغض لمن أبغض محب لمن أحببت وكفى بالله شهيدا وحسيبا وجازيا ومثيبا صلوات.
Thank you very much, Brother Ali Mehdi and Brother Hassan Dusti, for the beautiful recitation. Very small ziyarat, but very powerful and meaningful. Especially the part that whoever displeases you, as in Fatima Zahra, displeases the Prophet. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us all on this holy night, as we don't want to displease the Prophet, inshallah. Tonight is a special night, and we owe our attendance to the upbringing we've had from our parents, our mothers in particular. Our fathers obviously as well, but in particular our mothers, they spend the most amount of time with the kids usually. I wanted to take this time to give some of the names of the volunteers, the khuddam, those who were with us over the years and are no longer with us, to at the end recite Fatiha and Salawat for them, and also some new, unfortunately, people have passed away in the past few days. I'll start with the most latest one, Haji Marhuma Asia Afika. She's been an attendee and a khadim at the Mohammed Center for nearly 30 years. She went back to Bosnia to visit her family, and unfortunately, it was time for her, and she passed away very quickly. And she was not able to come back to Australia, and now her family's gone back to Bosnia. Mrs. Afika, those who are know her from the many years ago, and she's been a very active member as well over the recent years. She made very beautiful sweets on special events. She had a special love for Imam alayhi salam and the Ahlul Bayt, and she heavily promoted the love for Ahlul Bayt. As you know from the Bosnian community, there are not many Shias in that community, but she promoted it actively. Next one is, just today we found out, Marhum Mustafa Al-Zamili from Ahlul Bayt Islamic Center in Auburn. Very young individual. I met him a few times, maybe 20, 22 years old, very young. He had a sudden heart attack today and passed away. May Fatima Zahra bless his soul. And our beloved, is Brother Jeba here? Ahmed Jeba. Yes, there we go. His uncle, Marhum Haj Ali Jeba, he passed away recently, and our condolences to the Jeba family. And Haji Fatima Tabatabai, my mother's auntie, passed away last week. So as you can see, there's a few people just this week who's passed away. And then we have Brother Faramaz, Brother Hussein Azimi, Haji Mariam Hijazi, Haji Hamida Ali, and Haji Naja Sharif. They played a pivotal role in the establishment of this center, and their children and grandchildren are now part of the center and inshallah helping growing. Shall we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestow upon them the blessing from Fatima Zahra to be their guest on these nights and recite a loud salawat followed by Surah Al-Fatiha. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Tonight we will be listening to His Eminence Sheikh Mohammed Mehdi on some thought-provoking topic, and that is, if Fatima salamullah alayhi lived among us today, how she might respond to the modern challenges from women's rights to the moral decay. So, inshallah, without any further ado, I ask His Eminence Sheikh to come on the stage, and followed by Brother Ahmad Rashid for Majlis, and conclude with the Sinners and Eachers bid, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله اللهم لعنهم جميعا ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وذر الذين اتخذوا دينهم لعبا ولهوا وغرتهم الحياة الدنيا وذكر به أن تبسل نفس بما كسبت, and leave those who have taken their religion for a play and an idle sport, and whom this world's life has deceived, and remind them thereby, lest the soul should be given up to destruction for what it has earned. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Every day someone will turn up and say, look, there is a global moral crisis. You know, people are slowly fading away. There's a spiritual or spirituality drift. People are moving away. And there's a disintegration of the family unit. And I hear this over the time. Since I was a child, I remember like when I was young, people say, that's it, it's the end of times. And the world has disintegrated, it's become worse, and it's getting worse and worse. And you hear this all the time. And the problem is, our forefathers used to say the same thing. They used to say, oh, things are so bad now. In the old days, it was much better. And I would keep saying that, and I would keep saying that, and I say, hold on. Like when people look at the world, they say, oh, look what's happening in Palestine. And I said, I don't know if you guys remember 20 years ago what happened in Iraq. I don't know if you guys remember 20 years before that what Saddam did in Iran. I don't know if you remember 20 years before that what the Americans did in Vietnam. Okay, in Cambodia. People forgot Hiroshima and Nagasaki. People forgot all the crimes living in Australia. What was committed to the indigenous people in this country. So the world, there has always been this issue. Although a lot of people say the world is falling away and people are turning from religion, at the same token, you see a lot of people moving towards religion. People working in their lives towards this religion. Now you might say, hold on, the numbers have dwindled. No. You think the numbers have dwindled? Let's take a look when the Prophet ﷺ was martyred, and this is what we're here for. We're here. The attack on the house of Fatima wasn't something that took place months after the Prophet. It was immediate. It was immediate attack. You know, when you go to someone's house after a member of the family dies and you come and give for the aza. The aza of Fatima was an attack on her house. They came to give condolences with fire. That was back at the time of the Prophet. Said, you're telling me that now it's worse? And that religion is perpetual. And in the sense that it's, if you look at time, it's ubiquitous throughout time. It's always there. There's always the religious, there's always the thorough, the scrupulous in their faith, and then there's always the ones that apply the faith where they want. You know, the ones that put touch-up paint here and there, that's it. You know, religion's good here, put some splash of paint there, splash of Islam here, and then I'll put my ahad back with Iblis for the other things in my life. Now, they tell you people there's an endless quest for material satisfaction. Yes, modern day capitalism and the way it's structured, but capitalism in itself is in every form of government. Even communist socialism is capitalist. Why? Equal share between the poor, but the rich take all the money. It's not like the presidents of socialist governments are poor. They're not catching the subway with you. They're not jumping on the trains with you. They still live a very affluent life. They live a rich life. So, but how do we, wherever we are, whichever time, how would I navigate through this darkness? And what is the methodology? What is the way to do this? And as Brother Rida, who chose the subjects for today, you know, someone asked me, he said, you don't usually do long India. I got asked, what do you want me to speak about? And Hajj Mohammed Rida said, can you speak about these two subjects? I said, okay. So if you look, what would Fatima alayhi salam, she was amongst us today, what would be her principles and her priorities in responding to the clamor of the modern world, if you want to put it that way? You know what I mean? But once again, religion's always applicable. Al-Zahra alayhi salam, in her famous khutbah, Fadakiyyah, she says, وَالْعَدْلَ تَسْكِينًا لِلْقُلُوبِ, that Allah had made justice as something that taskina, and we say tranquility. You know when we say something's tranquil, why do we say it's tranquil? Because it's settled. It's at rest. It's soothing, it's quiet. And justice settles. And this is why if I have justice in my life, it's tranquil. Now the problem is sometimes people say, I want justice. and they will go to a judicial system to get justice. But they don't get the justice because you live in Australia. There isn't corporal punishment in Australia. There's not capital punishment. Someone murders, they don't get killed. So there's no justice, there's no equality in this matter. And it depends on what I know or who I know. And you could see one of the biggest crimes that was committed was by the Western democracies with what they're committing today and continue to commit. And no one's been brought to justice, even though the International Court of Criminal Court, World International Criminal Court, International Court of Justice, all have said that these perpetrators are committing a genocide. Has anyone been brought to justice? No. That doesn't exist. What justice was Fatima talking about? And this is where we're going in our discussion. She says, Ama wallah. Ama wallah, behold by God. She says, لو تركوا الحق على أهله. If they were to leave al-haq. When we say haq, we generally say the right. But al-haq, when we say huquq and rights, for example, when we say someone's haq, their rights. But al-haq, the right for everyone. My right, your right. Imagine you need a respirator right now. And they remove the oxygen from you. This is what took place. Had they left this breathing apparatus, لو تركوا الحق على أهله واتبعوا عترة نبيه. And had they followed the household or the family of Allah's Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, he says, لَمَا اخْتَلَفَ فِي اللَّهِ اثْنَانِ. Two would not conflict with God. There would be no conflict. There would be no issue where you actually sit there and you watch two people debate a subject that's clear. And one's just being ridiculous. And one, even the one that speaks on the side that's right, has an agenda. Even though there's something that they follow. But if we left it the way it was, the way God had wanted it, two wouldn't have come to conflict. وَلَوَرِثَهَا سَلَفٌ. This is what Al-Zahra alayhi salam says. لَوَرِثَهَا سَلَفٌ عَنْ سَلَفٌ. Okay, she said that the leadership would have been inherited from predecessor to predecessor. Then وَخَلَفٌ بَعْدَ خَلَفٌ. Successor after successor. حتى يقوم قائمنا التاسع من ولد الحسين. Until Imam al-Hujjah, Imam al-Mehdi comes, the ninth of the what? The posterity of Imam Hussein. So this is what would have happened, and everyone, we wouldn't be going in the problems that we are in. So the core of her political defense, if you will, is that the deviation and the rightful leadership, if we say, the deviation from the rightful leadership, I should say, the way that they deviated from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam was the abandonment of justice itself. By leaving Ahlul Bayt, you left justice. And this is what led to our problems, this is what led to discord, and all the problems you have, the injustices you have in the community, all the problems you have are from leaving the leadership of the Ummah, alayhim salam. And this is why she mentions in a khutbah, this is the importance of the khutbah. She says, أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ تَبْغُونَ. Do you seek the judgment of the Jahiliyyah, the age of ignorance? Is that what you want? By leaving Ahlul Bayt, this is what you seek? She says, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِنَ اللَّهِ حُكْمًا لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ. Who is a better judge than God? Who is someone that's better at deciding than God? Who represents God? This is what we're talking about. Why is it when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam talk, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Our dear brother was reading the ziyarah. He says, whoever pleases you has pleased God. Whoever displeases you has displeased God. What does that mean? Why would God link this together? Why is it when I read the Quran, it says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul wa ulil amri minkum. Obey God and obey His Messenger and obey ulil amr. Ulil amr, when we say ulul something, it means it's like, sahib hada shaykh. Ulil amr is a sahib al-amr. Ashab al-amr, the ones that have the amr, which is the command. What command? Islam. So who are they? When I ask who are they, people say, oh, it's the governor, it's the president. Now, when I was in Hajj, someone said to me, it's the king. The king is Waliul Amr. I'd love to see these people now and say, what about what's been happening? When you got that. I mention this all the time. I love mentioning this. When Alexander Yusuf came to Riyadh and he was wearing a shirt, it said, Orthodox Christianity or death in Hijaz, the country that's called Al-Mamlaka Al-Islamiyya Saudi. It's a Mamlaka, an Islamic kingdom. And its shi'ar, its flag is La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. Someone turns up with a shirt that says Orthodox Christianity or death. And that is a non-issue. So is this Waliul Amr? So the connection of the Prophet and the Imam to God is not a T connection. It's not like if you said, I obeyed the Prophet, okay, but I want to see what God has to say. This is kufr. This is kufr. For you to say that the Prophet, God forbid, would say something he hasn't been told to. Because God says that the Prophet does not speak from his own desire. It's not but a revelation revealed. So what we are seeking when we seek other than Ahlul Bayt, was we need to how this applies to us, the followers of Ahlul Bayt. It's not about Mahabbat Ali ibn Abi Talib only. It's not about loving Rasulullah and Ahlul Bayt. It's following them. And God says this in the Quran. He says to his messenger to tell the people, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهِ فَاتَّبِعُونِي. To follow me. To follow. If you love God, then follow me. Follow the Prophet. I have to do what the Prophet has told me to do. It's not just about saying, I love you. This is like a fog. We just, habbak. A word that I throw, that I do not act upon. You cannot tell me you love, what's in rahmatullah alayh, Sheikh al-Kafi, who was in Mashhad. He used to say, Shi'at Ali sharab nikhurand. He'd say, like, you're Shia Ali and you drink? Like, how can you say that I'm Shi'i and I drink? I drink alcohol. I'm not talking about drinking water. Go for it. Drinking alcohol. How can I say I'm Shia and I drink alcohol? Did you know the first thing Imam Hussein objected when it came to Yazid? He said, Yazid, sharibul khamr. His first objection was Yazid was an alcoholic. He consumed alcohol. So let's begin. Firstly, we said with justice. But how would Fatima alayhi salam to respond to the women's rights crisis? Because if you look at women's rights and suffrage and where we've got to, see, it's often framed in materialistic terms, not for what it is. One of the things is like that's discussed when it comes to women is like a parity in economic competition and equal pay. That's the first thing. When you want to talk about human rights, the first thing they bring up is equal pay. Oh, we're not paid the same. You do the same job, exact same effort, doesn't matter what you are, you should get the same pay. But if you're not doing the same, you shouldn't be getting the same pay. Doesn't matter who you are. We could all agree on that. Everyone can agree. There's no issue there. So, but let's take a look at the other things they look at. They want what they call liberation from modesty. And when I say liberation from modesty, they're trying to get people away from hijab. They want shamelessness. It's someone that has their own web page for everyone to peruse and pay money is someone that's liberated. But someone that wears hijab is someone that is incarcerated, someone that is persecuted. This is the way that it's perceived. This is the perception of it. This is the way that it's seen, that you aren't someone that is free. And the other thing that they see, because the first one's equal pay, the second one's the second one is the leaving the hijab, and the third thing that they see is basically the disintegration of the gender roles. Today's woo man, meaning she's not a woman anymore. She wants to wear the pants. I was once looking at the marital contract, and this is recent, this is about 6 months ago, and I started talking about gender roles in the relationship. It's funny, when you sit with a psychologist, I was sitting with a children's psychologist, and she was telling me, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, not Muslim. And she kept saying young boys and young girls. And I go, you keep saying young boys and young girls, are they different? She said, of course they are. The way that they are. And I said, why don't you guys talk like this when they grow up? Why is it when they're small, you say they're different and suddenly everyone's the same afterwards? But in psychology, they have to say it as it is, or else it won't make sense. So when I say this woman that's no longer a woman, I had one of the people object. She said, when you talk about gender roles, Sheikh, we are new age. We believe we're all the same. There's no difference. So I always use the same argument I've been using since day dot. I don't know who I got it from. I've heard it many times from different people. I don't know who stole it from who originally. But I told her, middle of the night, you hear a noise, someone's breaking through the back door. Who goes down to check out who's down there? You or your husband? And they both started laughing on the phone. They knew the answer. He's taking one for the team. He goes down, if someone's got a crowbar, he's going to get the lumpy head. She's not. This is the way, this is the system, this is the way it works. You're not going to go to your wife, listen, I was out there last time, it's your turn. Do you know what I mean? So this protector role is always there, but they've destroyed this. We're all the same when it comes to this. Now, if you were to look at Fatima alayha salam, how would she address this issue today? Okay, she would be looking at dignity, azzah, rather than material equality. She would be looking at affa, modesty, rather than gender roles and whatever we look at this, or whatever we have in this case. Because the true liberation of women is not achieved by imitating men in the workplace. You can't. You can't imitate men. That's why we have men's sports and women's sports. Otherwise, I've mentioned this before. Does anyone remember? I'll use this example. What is the only sport in the Olympics that's competed by men and women? One only. Huh? Do men and women play against each other in chess? Is that how the competition is? Huh? No, you're wrong. Ahsant. They don't. I've never seen Magnus play a woman. When? No. They verse each other. Is there men's chess and is women? No. Is there men's competition or women's competition, or they're all together? Are you sure about that? If I look it up and there's women, if I look it up and there's women, no. Is there a women's competition? Can someone look it up, please? I need to get to the bottom of this. Because then there'll be two sports. Be fun. So there is a woman's grandmaster. Kuftam Kadi. You've been wasting my time the whole time. No, I'm talking as an actual sport where women and men compete. Completely, they compete against each other. There's competition. One only. There's competition. Women win and men win. There's only one. Who knows it? Equestrian. Why? Why is it they can compete in equestrian? Because the horse is doing all the work. The dressage, something like that. That's the only one where they compete. In the equestrian, because the horse is doing all the work. So it doesn't work. And even with the argument, say they all play together, you just said they have to give a grandmaster because they can't be. They can't be that. You know, you're not going to get, you're not going to get them playing together. So in any of these sports. So, but because if you look in the workplace and the public sphere, there is no equality here. But where is it? It's when it comes to achieving proximity to Allah. Allah says in the Quran, Man amila salihan, whoever does righteousness, good act, min dhakarin aw untha. Allah mentions both men and women. Wahuwa mu'min. And the condition is that they are a believer. فَلَنُحْيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبًا. They will achieve the good life. That they will cause them to live a good life. Not here only, the good life in the hereafter. And you even see this. That the spiritual value of a woman's deeds. Particularly her crucial role in tarbiyah, in rearing, nurturing a child. You look at the narrations, when a woman, from the beginning to start off with, her pregnancy, and while this whole event of pregnancy to breastfeeding, till they finish, the whole time they are gaining the reward of someone that stands guard for the army of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Imagine that. Not only that, jihadul imra'a husn al-taba'ul. A woman, husn al-taba'ul, husn al-taba'ul doesn't only mean being good with their husband, being good, affording good company for their husband. This includes the intimacy. And if the husband shouldn't feel that he needs to get takeout, is a home-cooked meal all the time. This is how he has to feel about being at home. And this is what we're talking about. That this is jihad, like a man fighting in the way of God. You understand what I mean? So this is where we're talking about in the spiritual arena. That if you look at where her role is, it's in raising the child. Yani her rights would be based upon her intrinsic value. Yani as a human soul, rather than the competitive nature. It's not about competition. It's not about who's going to be faster or stronger. It's about who fulfills their role that they have been given. This is what Fatima alayha salam would implement. And if you look at the face, if you had to face all the relentless attacks on traditional and Islamic family structure, Fatima alayha salam, if you go through her teachings and the way she lived, would be the ultimate defense. Yani she taught about the health of the family, the health of the ummah in the sermon. And her stance was the first real stance, what's it called? Calling for social justice, right, as a woman. And firstly, the education of women. You know, my dear brothers and sisters, women never used to be educated. Do you know that? You know that? Obviously, men weren't educated, but women, nothing at all. And I'm not talking about how they always attack Islam. No, I'm talking about the West. You had to be, when people say, someone mentions, and I'm not bagging her because I don't want any SJW to come and attack me, but Helen Keller was loaded. She was rich. It's not like she was just blind and learnt 6 languages in Braille. No, they were rich. It's like, you can't, when, like I was talking to my son when we were coming in the car right now, and I was talking about, when you meet these people, they're really fit, energetic, they're always at the gym, haven't eaten a carb since 1984 or whatever. Most of them are singletons. They don't have family. They don't have things they need to worry about. So they live a certain life. They have a certain routine. They live in a certain way. There's none of this outside pressure affecting them. So when I sit there and I look at how someone has wealth, yeah, of course they're going to have more access to education. But we're talking about education where the Messenger of God, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, says it's farida, it's an obligation upon every talab al-ilm, acquiring knowledge, is an obligation upon every believing man, every believing woman. It's an obligation for them to know, for them to learn. They didn't let women learn in the old days, so they didn't read love letters. They wouldn't let them read. They wouldn't read love letters back in the old days, so she can't learn. Just in case someone slides, in case Don Juan DeMarco lives next door, slides a letter through and then she starts reading. They wouldn't allow that back then. They didn't want this thing. And when we talk about education of women, we're not talking about the liberal method. We're not talking about unnecessary academic education. I remember once I had kidney stones, and I was in Lebanon, and I had to see a urologist. And then I saw he had an understudy. She was with him. She was working there. And I said to her, are you a nurse? And she says, no, I'm studying this field. I said to her, you want to become an andrologist? You want to become a urologist? She said, yes. And I go, that is a distasteful job for a woman. She said, why? I go, because most of your patients are men. 99%, most of your patients are men. And you're being exposed to these men. How could you choose this kind of field? It's not even, in fact, even in the West, only, I think, I don't want to look, I know it's less than 2% of andrologists or urologists are female. They don't do this job. Why would you want to do this job? It's not a job you want to do. Danny, this is, you go to, remember St. George Hospital? They had a male midwife. Imagine he's a man, midwife. This guy had proper jailhouse stats. And he'd walk around, and he's a moment he'd be strutting. Like, dude, you're called a midwife. How do you accept that? The humiliation of having a job like this. You're a midwife. This is a female wife, feminine. So when we're talking about jobs and education, we're talking not the liberal way of educating. but proper understanding so they have ilm and knowledge. And the other thing was financial ownership and rights. And this is a big problem. Why? Because today, right now, you know how many phone calls I get where someone is asking me how do they cut their daughter out of the inheritance? I'm not joking. How can I give my earth to my sons? Why don't you want to give your daughter? So her husband gets money. It has nothing to do with husband. This is her rights. This is her money. Why are you cutting her out? This is jahiliyyah. This is ignorance. This is what Fatima alayhi salam fought against. And when you end up doing this, and a woman doesn't have a respectable standard of living, what happens? What happens? She's forced to compromise her dignity to ensure that she can live. So what did we have to wait in society? We had to wait for Gough Whitlam to come in 1974 and bring in the single mother's pension. That's what happened, and that caused everyone that wanted a divorce to say, yep, I can go out on my own, and then just run off. Why? Because we had taken that dignity away from them. That they'd say, oh, if I have to stay with this guy that beats me into a pulp for the rest of my life because the alternative is I'll be in the street. You know, that's how it used to be. I'm not talking about the Islamic community, I'm talking about the world. They used to live in a house where they would live with a tyrant. Imagine a Saddam in the house just for the sake that they do not get or they do not lose their dignity by leaving the house. This is one of the problems that came from Fatima standing up for her rights was huge. A woman to get up and stand for what's right, for her huquq. What the stance is multifaceted, but this is one of the points. Even today, if you look at the moral decay now, okay, the corruption in the land. Obviously, for our time, let's look at what's corrupting us today is technology, okay, and consumerism. These are, what's it called? I would say they're endemic. Is that a correct term for our time? Could you use it, or endemic to a land? But can I use endemic to our time? I don't know if I can use it or not, but let's use it. So it's only for our time. They didn't have this problem before. They didn't have the corruption of technology, and they did not have the corruption of consumerism. Back in the old days, you know, my son and I were reading the Tinderbox for Hans Christian Andersen, I think, last week. And he asked, what is a tinderbox? I said, back in the old days, you had this thing called the tinderbox where you'd get a sardine can or whatever and put the tinder in there. There'd be a flint and a fire starter. And this is how you'd start fires. Today, you go get a Zippo, a Bic, you know, and even companies that make water bottles or whatever will make a lighter. It's the world's changed. You have not only that, you have multiple colors you can choose from. How many different colors can you choose for something that start a fire now? The tinderbox became obsolete. It became something that you no longer use. It's not something that you're going to use today any longer. So consumerism, technology, and the erosion of hayat because of this. Why? You know, if you take a look at Instagram, you know, I remember someone had put a joke and they sent it to me and it was funny. I know, but it's not the time for me to make you laugh. But it pretty much had an image and it said, like, for example, it had someone picking something up off the ground, a cartoon, and said, this is every male and female on Instagram saying, I worked out my shoulders and my arms today, and they're bending down to pick up something. Has nothing to do with their shoulders and arms. So in other words, everyone's just exposing their body. They're just flaunting their body. Why? Because there's no more shamelessness. Modesty, there's no more shame anymore. It's become shameless. Modesty has become a shaheed today. The thing is, how do I counter this? You can sit there and say, oh, you're not allowed to touch this, you're not allowed to touch that. You can't stop things. They enter in your house. You know, they enter in your house one way or another. How they come in, how they enter, you don't know. So what Fatima would do hers was a counter method. And she would talk about tazkiyah. When the Prophet ﷺ said to her, he says to her, أي شيء خير للمرأة. What is good or best for a woman? So he's asking, what's the best for a woman? فقالت أن لا ترى رجلا ولا يراها رجل. That she does not see a man, nor does a man see her. What does this mean? He's asking what the best is. So if you look at it in the world, because you need to look at the Seerah Nabawiyyah, and there were the interactions between the Prophet and women, yes. So what does Fatima mean by this? Number one, there shouldn't be pointless discussions. There shouldn't be banter between men and women. Men and women aren't meant to be homies. They're not meant to be friends. Like you see, I used to go to the station. You used to go to Hersel Station after school, and you see all these people like high-fiving men and girls and boys. They give the hello and goodbye kiss. You think, what's going on? What used to happen? How is this permissible? And we're not talking about we're talking about Muslims do this. Muslims are friendly, overly friendly with each other. You know, she's my friend. How's she your friend? How's your friend? Where is their friendships? One of the brothers asked me, he said to me, my wife says she can have lunch with colleagues. And two of her colleagues, she has, are males, and they're sitting down and they go and have lunch, you know, you're having a chit chat. I said, if you asked her, can I go get two gorgeous girls and have work lunch with them, what would she say? He goes, she'd kill me. I tell her, well, you can't accept this. You find this abnormal. And he said, why do I have to say they're gorgeous? I go, because this will actually trigger that fire. If you said to any female, she wouldn't accept for you to be sitting with a woman alone. She's not going to accept this. So you just want to trigger that fire. Let her know, this is how I feel. This is what's wrong about it. What's the interaction between me? If it's professional, we're doing actually something got to work. And you know, you can't lie. God's watching you. You know when you're doing something professional. You know, sometimes we do something, we justify it. You know, I'm only looking to see if I know this person or not. I know why I'm looking. Why am I trying to kid? I can't sit there and justify why my looks up. So when she said this, فَضَمَّهَا إِلَيْهِ وَقَالَ ذُرِّيَّةً بَعْضُهَا مِنْ بَعْضٍ. The Prophet took her in his arms and he mentioned the verse in the Quran that this is to say ذُرِّيَّةٌ بَعْضُهَا مِنْ بَعْضٍ is the verse about who? The Anbiya. The Fatima inherited this knowledge and understanding from the Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Now, in the end, we go back to what causes us or what causes this moral decay. What was the point she mentions? What causes? She mentions وَقَدْ قُلْتُ مَا قُلْتُ عَلَى مَعْرِفَةٍ مِنِّي. Firstly, she lets us know that I have knowledge, I have understanding. I am someone that is, her words are words of ilm and knowledge, to the point when we read the ziyarah of Fatima, the beginning of it, we say Allah tested her before He brought her here. She was tested. Not only that, her station, and this is not a station that is exclusive when we read hadith and Ahl al-Bayt. This is a station that's mentioned in other sects. Even Ahl al-Sunnah mention what? What do they mention? They mention that Fatima, Sayyidat Nisa'i Ahl al-Jannah. So who has the highest station in paradise? Fatima. Fatima has the highest station. And we say Sayyidat Nisa, there's no woman above her in station. And her level is so high that Fatima, had Allah not created Ali, there would not be a kufu, an equal to marry Fatima, from Adam until the Day of Judgment. Obviously, Rasulullah is her father. But there's no kufu, there's no equal to marry her. That's her station. That's her position. There's no one that would be worthy of this position. Sayyidat Nisa Ahl Jannah. This is unanimous. All Muslims say this. There's not one Muslim that doesn't say this. So she says, I have said this ala ma'rifah, with full knowledge on my part, what she's saying. She says, بِالْخَذْلَةِ الَّتِي خَامَرَتْكُمْ وَالْغَدْرَةِ الَّتِي استشعرتها قلوبكم. The first thing she mentions is الخذلة التي خامرتكم. Now, what does she mention? A khadla. If I khadalt someone, I abandon them. I forsook them. When I forsake someone, بخذلوا. So, we abandoned, and this is what is for us today, we are abandoning religion. We are abandoning what God has commanded when we are moving in these directions. When we decide not to listen, we are abandoning them. And she's talking about the essence, the beginning. Those that abandoned Amir al-Mu'mineen. When she mentions the word, it signifies what? It signifies something deep. That there was some moral cowardice. And if I look at this, that there was some ability. When we say khadl, there was an ability to support him, but they did not. Okay, some due to fear, some for desire, for peace. Some people for the sake of unity. Let's forget this. Majlis Fatima and Zahra, they ignore it for the sake of unity. We don't need this. Oh, brother, people get upset. No. Why don't we, say, all right, forget about Ashura for the sake of unity. Let's celebrate the day of Ashura like others do, for the sake of unity. Others, they do this for attachment to worldly comforts. They're happy. Let's not say this. Let's just stick to what's happening in the world. If I become too religious, if I follow my religion too much, today, between the Muslims, honestly, right now, I don't want anyone to put their hands up. I want you to, how many of you, if you were to get your child married today, are going to marry them in a way that if Imam al-Mehdi was seated, he would be accepting of that marriage? Don't put up your heads, just in your head. How many rules do people break now for a marriage? How many of the laws are broken? Just sit there. Would Imam Sahib al-Amr attend a wedding did you do today? Think about that. And the other thing she mentions, she says, وَالْغَدْرَةِ الَّتِي اسْتَشْعَرَتْهَا قُلُوبُهُمْ. Now, ghadra is worse. Why? Because we mentioned al-khadla as abandonment. Ghadra is treachery. Yani when I say this, it's like khadla is passive. And when it's passive, but ghadra is betrayal. It's betrayal when you betray someone, when you set them up. And what does she mean by this betrayal? Bakhin laka ya ibn Abi Talib. You gave bay'ah to Ali. You were present in Ghadir Khum. Who was the first person to give bay'ah to Ali ibn Abi Talib in Ghadir? Does anyone know? Say it. Who was the first person to give bay'ah? Abu Bakr was the first one. Who was the second person to give bay'ah? Umar ibn al-Khattab. Who was the third person to give bay'ah? Uthman ibn Affan. Go read the narrations. They were the first three people to give bay'ah, recognizing that he is the wali. So this is why she's saying wal-ghadra. And when she mentions istash'aratha qulubukum. Istash'aratha, what does that mean? It does not a shi'ar or it's talking about there's these undergarments the closest garments that you wear to your body. Okay? When I mention this, they're called shi'ar, a shi'ar. This is the lowest garment. So when she says, istash'aratha qulubukum, your hearts were clothed, yani it fully encompassed your heart. Your heart was dressed in this, what? Betrayal. You fully sold out to what you knew was right. And this is where it begins with the original blueprint for moral decay. And the loss of rights begins with your heart. Goes back to religion. It goes back to the deen. That's why when it comes to coming to the center, it's very important. I'll tell my children, you have to come to the center. I tell the brothers that I see, you have to come to the center. People say, I want to watch online. I said, no, you have to come. You can't live this fake life. You see people, they all live a life where they're detached from each other. You have to turn, you have to be active in the center. You know those people, the dear brothers and sisters that have passed into God's mercy. That brother, Hajj Mohammed, Rida Al-Ghai, mentioned their name up here. I wish he and I even knew what their position is. The people that serve at the center, the people that come here and work. One of the sisters once I was coming in, she said, please, do dua for us and don't forget us on the Day of Judgment. I said, what? I said, you clean the center anymore, don't you forget me on the Day of Judgment. You're the one that comes here and cleans and works in the center. You don't know what your station is. Do not underestimate you serve at this place. And you bring your children. They not only come here and work, the sisters that work here bring their children here as well. So I need to give them pure knowledge. Why? Because there's secular influence outside. You go to the schools, the public schools, you go to the public systems. You know how many schools you go to, the bells aren't ring, ring anymore, and it's just a song. The kids are listening to the song all day. You look at everything, there's band. Look, if you look at the extracurricular activities, what are they? Band, dance, choir. They're your extracurricular activities. Everything has to do. Aerobics, what is that? Aerobics pretty much dance. Dance, but it gets you extra fit. You know what I mean? This is all it is. Then they'll name it fancy names like Zumba and whatever they come up with. Just so, it's all about dance. It's all about, everything's about that. And then you have to counter this. You have to counter this. How? By teaching and raising your children in the right way. The Imam says, Ya ma'ashar al-ansar, أدبوا أولادكم على حب علي فمن أبى فانظر في شأن أمه. That when you raise your child, raise them with the love of Ali. And if they don't, the problem is with the mother. What's lacking is with the mother. This is the role of the mother. So you might think, hold on, why should I raise my child? Okay, imagine I said this to a brother from another sect. Imagine I said to a brother, أدبوا أولادكم بحب علي ibn Abi Talib. And this is elementary, this is fundamental in your belief. What's he going to say? Oh, you guys worship Ali. No, brother, go look in your hadith. Ya Ali, this is a Sunni hadith, not hadith Shia, Sunni hadith. Ya Ali, he goes, لا يحبك إلا مؤمن ولا يبغضك إلا منافق. Only a believer loves you. So if I know the Prophet says, only a believer loves Ali, so what would I do? I'll raise my kids to love Ali. Because I don't want my child to become a munafiq. So I have that there. And this is the stance that Fatima put here. Raising and bringing your children and teaching them the love of Ahlul Bayt and attending these majalis. Because if I neglect the love of Ahlul Bayt and I neglect the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, and I see this in our community, we see this. We sometimes allow things to happen. We're okay when you see a sister. I'm not talking about someone that doesn't know the religion, but I've seen sisters, you see sisters that used to wear, for example, sharai. And then suddenly they lose a bit of weight. They tone up, all of a sudden she's on leggings, lycras, whatever. She's trying to let everyone know she lost weight. These are facts. I know people get offended by what I say, but I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to make friends. I don't really, I'm here to sleep in the grave by myself. Trust me, we're not going to be high-fiving in the grave together. I'm in the grave by myself, and I've got a weight I've got to deal with over there. Besides my own, and I've got to deal with other weights there. There's other things that I have to trouble myself with. So I'm not here to make friends. These are facts. That I accept this. When Allah Azza wa Jal said to Shu'aib that I will punish 100,000 of your followers, 100,000. He said 40,000 of them are what? Are the wicked ones. 60,000 are good. Allah is punishing 100,000, 60,000 are good. 60% are good. And sometimes you see oppression, sometimes you see someone being oppressed, someone being hurt, sometimes a calamity takes place. And you go, how? Sometimes it's a trial, sometimes it's a punishment. Okay? But the punishment of God obviously stopped the ghadab of Allah, like this stopped with Rasulullah. God says in the Quran that after Rasulullah, his presence ended these big punishments that you read in the Quran. So we ask, okay, I understand the 40,000 wicked you want to punish. What about the 60,000 good? Why do you want to punish them? He says, these are the words. I want to say just the words in Arabic. He says, دَاهَنُوا أَهْلَ الْمَعَاصِي وَلَمْ يَغْضَبُوا لِغَضَبِهِ. So what do they do? Dahanu. What does dahanu? You know what mudahana is? Mudahana is when you are happy with, you meet someone, like for example, I know someone that deals drugs. I see him, I smile on his face, I'm homey and friendly with him, and I know this guy's a criminal. I know this guy is the filth that you scrape at the bottom of your shoe after you step on doggy doodle or something. This is what he is, if he even equals that. He's beneath that. I know people, for example, that drink, and I'm okay with them drinking. I know people that steal, I'm okay with them stealing. In our community, they see people, and they know that this person doesn't have a working with children permit. And people know about this, and they'll still mix with them, as if nothing's wrong. And I don't want to get into them shabra. Fahamkum fi. This is how the people, they don't take stance when it comes to this. They find this normal. And then when problems happen, they go, Allah, why is this happening? Why? Because lam yaghdabu li ghadabi. They do not get angry with my anger. And this is why I'm going to finish off with the introductory verse. Sorry for the time, but I haven't spoken about 6 weeks. I haven't had a speech. So I think I'm getting a bit over the board here. The introductory verse, Allah says, وَذَرِ الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا دِينَهُمْ لَعِبًا وَلَهْوًا. Wadhar means is to leave them. Don't worry about them. Don't even give them consideration. Who? الَّذِينَ اتَّخَذُوا دِينَهُمْ لَعِبًا وَلَهْوًا. The ones that take their religion as a play. You know those ones when you have a problem, you tell them, listen, the Prophet says this. You know what they actually say this? I've heard this several times. They say, خَلِّ Allah ajanab, or خَلِّ النَّبِي ajanab. Put God to the side or put the Prophet to the side. Don't bring them in. Let's solve the problem without religion. So religion is a garment that they wear at funerals. You know, where the Quran gets open at a funeral. And some people get shocked when people read the Quran at a wedding. They go, oh, what are you doing reading the Quran? So the deen is play. وَغَرَّتْهُمُ الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا. Why? Because they've been deceived by this world. And then God says to his prophet, وَذَكِّرْ بِهِ ذَكِّرْ بِالْقُرْآنِ, or ذَكِّرْ بِالدِّينِ. Remind them with the religion. أَن تُبْسَلَ نَفْسٌ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ. Because if you do not take this in, you do not worry about this, tubsala nafs, you destroy yourself. You will decay, you'll be corrupted with what you've done. So the core of everything is religion. The core of everything. You want to fix everything? If you notice everything I mentioned, goes back to the wilayah of Amir al-Mu'mineen and following the teachings of Amir al-Mu'mineen. It's not just accepting his wilayah, it's following the teachings of Amir al-Mu'mineen. And that was the stance of Fatima alayhi salam. Because by losing the correct leadership, we have this religion we have today. Take a look at the religion you have today. Take a look at the religion without Ahl al-Bayt, whose lives are being paid. You see it today. People like to ignore this, but I don't care. I say it. Take a look. The people getting killed today, and the only ones standing against the oppression, the majority of the ones that follow the Ahl al-Bayt. People might get upset. The only celebrations I saw in Greenacre was when Jew Lanny got in. That's the only time they got out there and celebrated. There was no stance. These are facts. You know? Everyone's got multiple walls in their house. They can bang their heads as much as they want. These are facts. These are facts. Without the wilayah, you don't know haqq and batil. It's all about wilayat Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. Was Hajj will be reading the dua, so I'm going to leave that for him to read after his majlis. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى آلك المظلومين. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى أمك الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. لمصائب الزهراء هجرت المضجعا وأذلت جفني من عيوني أدمعا. أفكان من حكم النبي وشرعه أن تضرب الزهراء ضربا موجعا. الله ما فعلوا بآل نبيهم فعلوا بآل نبيهم. قادوا عليا بعده بنجاده البتول لا الدهر رد الأذلع وضعت وراء الباب حاملا لم يكن قد آن لولا عصروها ومضوا بكافلها يهرول طيعا يا علي لولا الوصية لم يهرول طيعا خرجت تعثر خلفهم تدعوهم خلوا ابن عمي أو لا أكشف للدعاء رجعوا إليها بالسيات فسودوا بالضرب منها متونها كي ترجع tonight. Our hearts gather not in our hearts gather in grief. We sit together in remembrance of the broken heart of the daughter of Rasulullah, the light of his eyes, the soul of his soul, Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen. She was a woman, she was a lady who filled Medina with light. But after the Prophet's departure, the light began to fade. The house that echoed with the voice of the revelation had become silent except for the sound of a mother weeping for her father. She would go to the grave of Rasulullah. Kneeling beside it, she would say, "Oh Father, Gomak ya Mari'uni." Oh Father, after you, my sorrow has no end. My Father, my patience has vanished after your loss. She who once smiled beside her father now stands alone at his grave, her back against the wall of grief, her heart torn between pain and patience. Can you hear the pain of Fatima? Not from her heart, but from her tongue, as she complains to her father. But what would happen next? She wouldn't go to the grave to complain, but she would go in person to Rasulullah complaining. They would attend the door holding fire, intending to receive bay'ah from Ali ibn Abi Talib. She would stand behind the door to reason with the people, saying, "This is the door that my father Rasulullah would stand at, and he would ask permission to enter. يا أهل البيت أتأذنون لمحمد بالدخول. That was Rasulullah. For what are you doing at my door? The narration say, when the la'in, when the man, when he knew Fatima was behind the door, he would put his hands on the door, he would push the door, breaking the door. Wa wayla wa Fatima. He broke the door on her. La that wara al-bayab ri'ayatan lis-sitri wal-hijab. She would fall behind the door. The group of men would attend Ali. As she was behind the door, the la'in says, when I felt her behind the door, I put my hands on the door. And when I remembered my anger towards Amir al-Mu'mineen, I pushed the door until I heard the ribs of Fatima cracking. She would go, Ya Abadan, Ya Rasulallah, Buya rahat lilbayab, لكن ما علي حجاب. حسبي الرجاز من لذت خلف الباب. يا بويا عذرني واسقط المحسن وصدري ينعاب وكسر ضلع وجنيني أيست مني. كسر ضلع وجنيني أيست مني. For Imam Ali would grab the la'in, throwing him on the floor, standing on his neck, saying that if it wasn't for the wasi of Rasulullah, you would not attend my door, for they would tie the rope around the hands of Ali, beginning to take him out of the house. But what would he see as he exited the door? He would see Fatima behind the door. Yes, she has lost her muhsin, as her ribs have been broken. He would cover Fatima in his holy cloak. Wa Fatimata Allahumma ajjal liwalika al-faraj. Allahumma ajjal liwalika al-faraj. All together. Allahumma ajjal liwalika al-faraj. Allahumma ajjal liwalika al-. All together, stand up and make a circle for Fatimiyyah. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. 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 اللهم عجل Don't be shy. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج أدركنا نحن يا إمامنا أدركنا يا سامعا كلامنا أدركنا قد أحرقوا خيامنا أدركنا فر العيال في القرى العجال خر العيال بالقرى العجال رضيعنا على الثرى العجال أيا مخلص الورى العجال أيا مخلص الورى العجال 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 العجل ولم تبرد نار الخيم الحجل أيا بكاء الخدر دم الحجل وقد طال الجور الأمم الحجل أيا ثار الله الأشام اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج اللهم عجل All together اللهم عجل اللهم عجل ليك الفرج أدركنا يا حن يا المحاصر أدركنا بغربة السواتر أدركنا بحق هل من ناصر أدركنا بقلة عديدنا العجال بقلة عديدنا العجال بمذبح وريدنا العجال بحرمة شهيدنا العجال بحرمة شهيدنا العجال 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 العجل وكل أرض كربلاء الحجل فمنا استعلمه الولا العجل فلا طاب العيش سوى العجل ولو ندري أن نقتلى اللهم عجل